Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 11 for 2026, and we've finally had some football, and we're going to be reviewing it today. 2026 opening round kicked off over the weekend. 5 matches were played. We're going to go through all 5, give you the best players, give you all the information you need to know from the weekend of football. How did your team go? We're going to go through all of that. Don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button depending on what platform you're on. This podcast goes live twice every single week. Mondays we do this review episode, and on Thursdays we do the preview episode of the upcoming round. So that goes all the way through the home and away and final series for the AFL. We also have AFLW content once we get a bit closer to that season kicking off. Other than that, I don't think there's too much other housework to go through. It's great to have footy back. There's no doubt about that. It was a good weekend of football. Hopefully we can go through it all, see what we can find. Don't forget to jump in the comments and let me know what you thought of the weekend of football. But yeah, let's jump straight into it. First game of the weekend is where we'll start. It was on Thursday night. Thursday night football is back. We kicked off the season with Sydney v Carlton. A lot of information on your screen right now if you're watching this. If you're just listening, I'm going to read through some of it. We won't go through it all, but just a little explainer, I guess, about the information. Obviously, Sydney, top left corner. Carlton players, bottom right corner. Position, pretty self-explanatory. Their main position that they played in this game. MI is inside midfields. MO is outside midfields. DG is general defenders. DK is key defenders. FK, key forwards. FG, general forwards. And the only other one is R, which is rucks. Rating is the raw rating from the stats, the numbers. That gives you basically how good a player played, according to our rating system that we do for every single game, every single player. Position rating is a little bit different, so that adjusts it based on their position. It just comparatively compares it to every score from that position over the last couple of years and gives us a rating out of 10. So that just compares them not individually so much to speak, but more as a whole of a position. Match rank is their rating in order for this match, obviously 1 through 46 now that there's 23 aside. Goals, we know what that is. MVP, that's your top 5 players, which is also down in that bottom left graphic. 5 highest rated players get votes. Winning team get 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Losing team get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that goes towards our MVP at the end of the season, but it also goes towards the BNFs that we do as well for each team. Brown is Brownlow votes. They are the votes that I give in the Brownlow. Notes, if there's any notes, pretty self-explanatory. A new rating, that will adjust as the year goes by, depending on how well they go, what their rating for 2026 is. Obviously, there's only been one game, so everybody's rating is just their rating from this game. That's the housework. Hopefully, it makes sense. We'll see. It was an interesting game, this one, though, for sure. It looks like it was a massively high-scoring game, and, I mean, it was. The second half was huge. Pardon me. But the first half was a bit of a slog to get through in many ways. First quarter was 2-2 Carlton to 0-3 Sydney. Sydney just looked really sloppy early. Just couldn't get their hands on the football at all. Well, they could, but when they had it, they just fumbled and made some skill errors and just kept turning it over. And Carlton's pressure was great, don't get me wrong. Absolutely, they came out of the blocks firing with their contested football and their pressure. Second quarter, Sydney did look a little bit better. They kicked 2 goals, 3. Carlton kicked another 2-2. So it was a 10-point lead to Carlton at half-time. They felt like they were in control, but at the same time, they hadn't put a margin on them, and Sydney had wasted plenty of chances as well. So it still felt like it was a game that was going either way at this point. They came out at half-time, and Carlton kicked the first couple, and it was like, okay, maybe this Carlton team is completely on, when Pitane kicked his second. But then from that point on, it was an absolute onslaught, one that you never really see in football. Maybe we'll start to see a bit more, but it was insane to go from 2 goals in the first half, including 0 in the first quarter, to then kicking 12 goals, 3 in the third quarter. The Swans absolutely tore Carlton to shreds. They just didn't have an answer. They couldn't stop them. The ball out of the centre, they couldn't stop. The ball from the back line, they could not stop. It was just run and gun offense from Sydney, and they started hitting targets. They started not dropping uncontested marks, and the reward was on the scoreboard. It was even more extreme than what we saw from Sydney in 2014. 2024, sorry. If you think back to 2024 when Sydney won the minor premiership, there was many weeks where the games were kind of in the balance for most of the game as a whole, but there was a quarter where Sydney absolutely put the pedal down. Typically, that was a 7 or 8 goal quarter, not a 12 goal quarter like this. This was just unheard of almost. But it was just very reminiscent of that side. So they kicked 12-3, and Carlton still managed 4 goals 2 in that third quarter. So it was a really high scoring quarter for both teams. But typically, if you kick 4 goals in a quarter, you're like, we're at least going to be in the fight. But they went from 10 points up at halftime to trailing by 39 points at three-quarter time, and the game being all but dead. So, yeah, wild third quarter. That's where the game was won and lost. Final quarter was a bit like half as much of that third quarter, really. 6 goals, sorry. 6 goals, 3 for Sydney, and 2 goals, 3 for Carlton, to end up being a 63-point win for the Swans, after being basically 4 goals down a few minutes into the third quarter. Unreal turnaround. Something that we don't see very often, and we certainly didn't expect to see in this one. Team stats for this one, we'll just run through a few of the important ones. Possessions were pretty similar for both teams. Carlton did have more of the contested footy. I think they were plus 20 at half-time. They ended up still plus 17, so they were good in the contest. The issue is, as it has been for Carlton for a few years now, I think, turning that contested football into wins. Once Sydney got it out into the open, they just had no answer. Carlton just could not stop them. Inside 50s were dominated by Sydney, 67-50 plus 17, which is pretty reminiscent of a 63-point margin. Pretty self-explanatory, I think, that one. Clearance numbers were pretty level. I think Sydney made use of their clearances a lot better than Carlton did, especially in that second half. They were really damaging from the stoppage, but also, in a way, from the backline as well. They scored reasonably freely from the backline, Sydney, in this one. They had a couple really good runs where they just could not be stopped. If you're looking at score sources here, stoppage was 58-38 in favour of Sydney, so plus 20. But turnover was 67-25. And defensive half was huge, 53-29, so plus 24 from the defensive half. Kicking 8 goals is huge. 3 goals to 1 from centre bounce in favour of Sydney. So pretty much across the board, Sydney just controlled this game. They were the better team out there in the end. I don't think too many people could argue with that. It was pretty clear. I know the first half, Carlton probably were slightly ahead, but that got pretty wiped out pretty quickly. And I truly believe that Sydney should have probably been a little bit better. They just were very fumbly early. They just took a little bit to get into the game in the first game of the season. So once they got going, there was no stopping them. Now, I look at the players. What can we make of this? Justin McInerney, clear best on ground, I think. Higher rated game than he had in any match last season. Fantastic start to his year. Kicked 3 goals, all of them in the third quarter. He was pivotal in this performance for Sydney, the third quarter resurgence. Errol Goulden was their second highest rated player. He was huge throughout most of the game, but that second half especially was really, really good. Brodie Grundy was really good in the ruck, one of the better ruckmen of the weekend. Solo rucked, basically, had pinch hitting from some key forwards, but solo rucked against Pitane and Reedy for Carlton, who they went in with the two ruckmen. Pitane was clearly the number one ruckman for Carlton. He kicked 3 goals. He was good around the goals. Grundy was probably a lot better in the ruck department, but Pitane did really well to kick 3 goals. Rowbottom, really good defensive game. Isaac Heaney, really slow to start, copped a knee in the head in the second quarter, barely touched it in the first half, really struggled to get into the game, but his second half was huge, ended up with 2 goals, 20 odd touches, really, really good performance from him after a slow start. I don't know if there's too many others to go through. I think overall there's a lot of consistent players in that Sydney team. Nick Blakey ran well from the back line on the most part. Rampy defended well. Blyce was solid. Matt Roberts, really good. Kicked a couple goals in that third quarter. Charlie Curnow kicked 3 goals in his first game for the Swans. They got decent enough goals from their key forwards. 3 for Curnow, 3 for Amadi. Is good payback, I guess. Good return. Logan McDonald also kicked 1. So 7 goals between those 3 isn't too bad. They did kick 20 goals though, 12 of which were in the third quarter. Other side of the fence, Carlton, they struggled in many ways. Sam Walsh was clearly, I think, their best player. Rated highest and was really good. Mark Pitane, as we said, kicked 3 goals. In that forward 50 was really damaging. Around the rest of the ground, maybe got beaten by Grundy. Cooper Lord was really good on the wing. Ollie Florent was really solid as well in his first game as a Blue. Wiedering, really solid as a key defender. But overall, they just didn't have enough firepower, I guess, and enough consistency across their whole team. You average out the ratings, which is how we get our team ratings, which is down that bottom left corner. Sydney absolutely smacked them. And that's just a consistency across the ground. Yeah, Sydney did have a better peak, like the McInerney's, the Gouldens, Grundy, all above anybody from Carlton. But they also just had multiple players in and around that 100 rated mark. In the end, Sydney had 9 players get a rating of over 100. Carlton had 4. So it was just a big difference in the performance in the end by both teams. And yeah, that's basically the long and the short of Sydney v Carlton. Final takeaways. Sydney just too good, I think. We kind of expect Sydney to be a reasonable team this year. I think last year was just a bit of a down year for them. I expect to see a lot more like 2024 from them. We'll see. They missed Gordon a lot last year. Probably a big thing. But also adding Charlie Curnow in that forward line just gives them a target. But it also allows Amati and McDonald to maybe have less, won't have the number 1 defender on them, which allows them to have more opportunity to potentially score goals. So I think it just works really well for them. So we got eventually what we expected from Sydney. It took a half of football to get there, but they did show some really good signs. Massive game for them this weekend up against Brisbane. That's going to be very telling for both teams, I think. So Sydney, really good start. They'll be happy. Check that one off the list. Carlton, I don't know. They show some good signs. They're really good in the contest. When the ball's not in the contest, though, they just have nothing. You can't stop the opposition from scoring, as was evident in that third quarter. So they just have to try and keep the ball in, or they need to score. They're the 2 options. And when they're scoring, they're going okay. But they've got Richmond this Thursday night at the MCG. We all know what happened last year on Thursday night for that opening game between those 2 teams. Carlton have a lot relying on this match. They need to come out and they need to bounce back from this performance. Not that this was terrible on paper. It's just the way it happened, I guess. The fact that they were leading by 4 goals, the fact that they wasted some opportunities, and then they just kind of had no fight back at all once the run started from Sydney. So they have a lot on the line this weekend up against Richmond, in my opinion. So we'll see how that plays out. But that is a wrap on Sydney v Carlton. We'll move now into Friday night football, and it was up on the Gold Coast for the Suns v Cats, and 2 from 2 floggings. Really, this one could have been a lot worse as well. Gold Coast were absolutely dominant. 7 goals to 2 in the first quarter to lead by 29 points at quarter time. Half time it was out to 71 to 29. So really, really in the control seat at this point. Then they kicked 7 goals to 1 in the third quarter, and it was looking like potentially 100-point flogging coming the way of the Cats. But the Cats did turn it around. They kicked the last of the third quarter. So at one point they were 18 goals to 4. After that they kicked 6 goals to 1. Geelong did, at least. So they did fight back late-ish. Once again through Ollie Dempsey, who, I mean, most people probably remember what he did on grand final day in that final quarter or so. Was very similar here. Ends up with 4 goals. But not much else to say about this game other than Geelong looks slow. It's the first game of the season. We saw this from teams last year, opening round 1. There were some teams that just did not perform that day, and ended up being pretty good throughout the rest of the season. Collingwood was one. They lost opening round by 50 points to GWS. They came back and won the next 7 or 8. Fremantle, they started really slow. They got pumped by Geelong by 80 points. They ended up playing finals and being probably one of the best teams in the second half of the season. I can't remember if there was any others, but you kind of forgive those early games. 1 or 2 bad games early season. It's not the end of the world. It's not great. Their percentage has absolutely taken a knock here. It's not great for Geelong in the long run, but in the short term, sorry. But in the long run, I think you just completely forget about it. You worry about what they do next. They've got Fremantle this week in Geelong. That'll be a huge game if they can bounce back. Obviously, they were really good against Fremantle last year in round 1. This year's going to be a bit different, you think, but we'll see how that plays out. Gold Coast on the other side of things, they're flying. That was absolute domination, and I forgot to put position ratings for Gold Coast on the screen, but I did do them. Anyway, yeah, after 4 rounds, it's pretty hard to see Gold Coast not being clearly on top of the ladder. They shouldn't lose a game over the next few, and they should probably be winning most of them quite comfortably. So after getting through Geelong, it's not the toughest run for them over the next 3 weeks. And from what we saw, they're absolutely flying. There's a lot to get through in terms of the players, but before we do that, let's just run through some team stats here for this game. 71 inside 50s for Gold Coast. I don't know, I haven't looked back, but I reckon it's a fair while since Geelong have conceded 71 inside 50s. Actually, maybe they did it in the grand final. I can't remember back that far. But like 71, that's a huge number. Plus 21 overall inside 50s for Gold Coast. It's just giving your team so many opportunities at kicking goals. Clearances were actually won by Geelong, surprisingly 41 to 34. Even though the Gold Coast midfield absolutely were the better midfield, clearance-wise, suggests it might not be the case. 18 centre clearances to 10 in favour of Geelong as well. Is worth noting. Turnover numbers, though, were huge. 88 for Geelong. I know hot, humid kind of conditions, but 88 turnovers in a game of football. Yeah, the game's a lot faster so far this year. Well, 4 of the 5 games were a lot faster than most games last year. But 88 turnovers is ridiculously high. 75 for Gold Coast is a pretty high number. 88 is ridiculous. I don't reckon there was any teams that averaged over 75 last year. I don't think there was any teams that really averaged over 72 turnovers a game. So that just tells you how many 88 is, and a big reason why they got absolutely pumped. That's just a massive amount of times that you're giving the ball to the opposition. You're just not going to win games of football giving the ball over that many times. And then when you jump into the score sources for this game, it continues down that path. Scoring from turnover, as we just said, 88 turnovers from Geelong gave Gold Coast 91 points. 91 to 35 on turnover is ridiculous. You look at stoppage scoring, it was 34-33, so 1 point in it. There was only one score from kick in, so it was the whole game was just won and lost on that turnover game, and that's probably a good thing and a bad thing for Geelong. Obviously, there's more to it than just that, but if you tidy up those turnovers, all of a sudden you're just straight back to an achievable fix, I think. So it's not the end of the world. You look at scoring from areas of the ground, forward half scoring 79 to 39, and that's all because of those front half turnovers, or in Geelong's case, back half turnovers, giving the ball back to Gold Coast in the Gold Coast forward line. Not much scoring from centre bounce, only 2 goals to 1. It was all just turnover scoring throughout this game, and it was an absolute domination by Gold Coast. And the players that you can look at that did the bulk of this damage. I mean, Petrarca's the obvious one that everyone will know about. He was huge throughout this game, but just the way that the Gold Coast whole backline kind of pressed and maintained position, kept that pressure on and forced these turnovers. Like, a lot of the turnovers weren't just because of skill errors or bad mistakes. It was well played by Gold Coast. Don't take anything away from them with what I'm saying. They were absolutely fantastic. Best players, Petrarca was the highest rated player on the ground. No surprise there. He kicked 3 goals, had 30 odd touches. Rated the highest, 186.86, was huge. Fantastic performance from him. This whole Gold Coast team was really good. You could go through a lot of players here and say they were good. Mac Andrew nearly took mark of the century. That would have been an absolute ripper. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. I can't even think of what quarter it was in, but it'll be in the highlights package for sure, because he flew, and man, he will take mark of the century if he keeps flying like that. John Noble, really good, kicked a couple goals. Bodie Uland was good in the back line. Leo Lombard, as we said through pre-season, there was a lot of hype around him last year. He got injured early. Fought his way into the team, didn't make much impact, was subbed out a few times. But this year, he started absolutely on fire. His pre-season was really good, his couple pre-season hit-outs, and then this one. He doesn't need to have a huge amount of disposals to have a massive impact on the game. But, I mean, he got a fair chunk of it in the end. But still was really, really effective. Every time he touched the ball, you just felt like something was going to happen. Ended up with 15 touches, 2 goals. Was the 9th highest rated player on the ground. Noah Anderson, he moved into this game really well in the end. 24 touches, 1 goal, 4. Could have had a day out if he had kicked a little straighter. Bailey Humphrey was huge. Kicked 4 goals, including 3 in the first quarter. And the first 2 for Gold Coast. Other than them, Sam Collins, great in the back line. Jared Witts, solid enough in the ruck. Miller was good. Banking, ended up with 4 goals, as he typically does. Didn't have many touches, but did kick 4 goals. Just a really, really good, even performance from Gold Coast. They didn't really have anyone that didn't perform that well. So, yeah, really, really positive signs for Gold Coast early season. Other side of the fence, Geelong were missing some players. There's no doubt about that. Dangerfield not playing. Jeremy Cameron not playing. Those sort of players, I think both of them probably back for round 1 against Fremantle this week. But no certainties, I don't think. Buddy Smith played, but struggled to have an impact. He was only 29th rated player on the ground. Tanner Bruin had plenty of it. Connor O'Sullivan was solid in the back line. Ollie Dempsey, the highest rated player for them, ended up with 4 goals, all in that last quarter and a little bit, 20 touches. He just runs games out really well. Tom Atkins, probably their best midfielder on the day. Mark O'Connor was good. They had a few defenders that were all around that okay mark, in Jack Henry, Zach Guthrie, Tom Stewart. But they just had, in the end, too many players that just didn't perform. Mullen had little impact. Brad Close had next to no impact. They just got dominated in hit-outs. Lawson Humphries struggled after his game for WA in Origin not that long ago. Their forward line just didn't really perform that well. So it was just a game where I think you put a line through Geelong and say, we'll forgive it, we'll forget it for now, but show us something better this weekend. On the other side of the fence, Gold Coast, they have to try and not get too far ahead of themselves right now because they are flying. They've got some absolute star players. They've got a very healthy, long list of good players. You got to think last year's Brownlow medalist is currently on the injured list, and they're doing this to the team that lost the grand final last year. So, danger signs in the AFL right now. I think a lot of teams are watching this and saying, holy dooly, they've got a lot better. How are we going to match this? So it's going to be interesting, but certainly a really good performance by Gold Coast in this one. We'll jump into Saturday afternoon football, kicking off with GWS Hawthorn, rematch of last year's elimination final between these two teams, but we get the opposite result. GWS looked really good. Hawthorn did have a lead early in the game when Lloyd Meek kicked one, but then GWS kicked 4 or so, 5 maybe, in a row through that middle of the first quarter. Ended up 8 goals in the first quarter for GWS, 5 for Hawthorn. Really high scoring first quarter. But 19 points up at quarter time. They extended that out to be 35 at half time. And then it kind of just stayed around about that margin throughout the rest of the game. I think the closest Hawthorn got was about 21 points after half time. And the biggest margin was about 40 points the other way. So it stayed within that sort of range for the rest of the game and just kind of, I won't say petered out into the result, but it never really felt like Hawthorn were coming back, but it also never felt like GWS were running away from that point. Yeah, that's basically the timeline of this match. Having a look at some of the stats of the game, inside 50s, 63-58, so not too much of a discrepancy. Clearances, GWS did really well. Seeing them missing a lot of their inside mids, starting mids. I know Finn Callahan did play in this game, but they're still, well, they're not going to have Tom Green all season. But it's a different look than GWS have had before. And they still did pretty well, plus 7 clearances, plus 5 centre clearances. Contested footy, uncontested, they won both of those. Turnover numbers, GWS actually had 10 extra turnovers than Hawthorn, but Hawthorn just couldn't make use of those 10 extra possessions. We were just talking about the last game being a really high turnover game. Like GWS at 74 is a pretty high number, but still 14 less than Geelong had. But Hawthorn at 64, that's more what we expect to see from a team in pretty good conditions. So those are the sort of numbers we expect. Looking at scoring in this game, we've got scoring from stoppages. GWS did their work there, 47-25. But scoring from turnover, 74-70 in favour of GWS. So even though Hawthorn got those extra 10 turnovers, they actually scored less points from turnover than GWS. So that's a big sign there. Defensive half scoring, we know GWS are great at this. They always have been. 45-25. Forward half was actually level at 61 apiece, and centre bounce was 16-9 in favour of the Giants. So yeah, that's the team stats of this match. I think overall, it was a game that maybe Hawthorn wasted plenty of opportunities throughout. But in the end, I think GWS just looked the more composed team going forward and the more ready to win team in this situation. Will that be the case in a few weeks' time? Who knows? But GWS certainly came out ready to play and did what they needed to do and got the result. We'll now jump into some team stats for this one. Look at the best players. Highest rated player on the ground was James Sicily for Hawthorn. He had a huge third quarter. Really did start to try and turn things for Hawthorn, but unfortunately not enough players went with him. He was clearly best on in terms of numbers. He was really good. Stringer kicked 5 to be GWS's best player. He was huge, important up forward for them throughout most of this game. They also got plenty of other contributors in that tall forward lineup. Jesse Hogan kicked 3. I think they were all in the first quarter. Jake Riccardi kicked 3. Grzuski kicked 2. So they got plenty of goals from their talls in this game, which just was probably the thing that separated them in the end. Hawthorn forwards, they still got 4 from Gunston, 2 from Charles, so that's not a bad return. But when you look at probably the 4 key forwards for GWS, with one of them rotating through ruck, they got like 13 goals. So 13 out of their 19. Hawthorn's backline, key defence, is typically what a lot of people say is their best part of their ground. In my opinion, they didn't do great. Josh Battle was solid. Tom Barrask probably got beaten. And then Sicily had plenty of ball, used it pretty well, but in the end, GWS just looked too good going forward. Other good players, Fonte was huge for GWS. He was really good. Clayton Oliver in his first game for the Giants, just like Petrarca for the Suns the night before. Fantastic game from him. He was huge and crucial. Kicked a great goal too. Go check that one out. Toby Green, we know what he can do. Playing more midfield minutes early season this year. Whether that's the case for most of the season, we'll find out. But he was really good. Caniglio got forward, kicked a couple goals. And yeah, other than that, most players on GWS were pretty solid. They had a couple players that maybe they need a little bit more out of. They didn't get much out of Whitfield and Ash, who typically are their best users from that back line. In this game, it was Joe Fonte who was their best ball user from the back line, which is fine. If somebody else steps up, you can't all be performing huge at the same time. On the other side of the fence, as we said, Sicily was highest rated player on the ground. Connor McDonald was solid. Battle was good enough. Nick Watson once again showed how good he is going to be. He kicked a couple goals. He was very, very important at important times as well. He's going to be an interesting watch this season to see what type of midfield minutes he gets, but also how much damage he can cause, because he can turn a game very quickly. Gunston, as we said, kicked 4 goals. Good start to his season. Started right where he left off last year, so he's going really, really well. Just overall, just a few too many players that just didn't reach the numbers that they need to. Like most players, most of the rest outside of those 5 all went below their average for last year, pretty much. Which you just need some more impact all around the ground. Like Weddle didn't score hugely. Who else struggled? Ginnivan had 17 and 2 goals, but wasn't super huge for a 2-goal game for him. Newcomb struggled in the midfield, really struggled to get the ball. When you think last time they played up there at NG Stadium against GWS in that elimination final, Newcomb was huge, really struggled in this one. And yeah, I think overall their midfield just struggled quite a lot compared to what the GWS midfield did. On to the next one, because I don't think I've got any final thoughts on that one other than really good start to GWS. I still think Hawthorn probably outperform them across the year. They just need to get more impact from that midfield, and this game probably changes quite a bit. We moved to Saturday night, and this was game of the round. Huge performance. both teams went at it, high scoring, 16 goals to 15, and the Bulldogs come out on top by 5 points. 3 goals 1 to 2-7 at quarter time to be dead level. Inaccuracy from the doggies. But they tidied it up after that point, kicking 14 goals 8 for the rest of the match, compared to 12 goals 15 for the Lions. Halftime, it still wasn't high scoring, like super high scoring. It was 6 goals to 5 at halftime. Third quarter, it really started to open up the way of Brisbane, and it looked like they were going to put them to bed. They went out by like 25 odd points, 24 points, somewhere around there, when Logan Morris kicked a goal, and then again when Charlie Cameron kicked a goal at the 29-minute mark of the third quarter. And it was like, oh, okay, Brisbane are putting them to bed right now. But then Darcy and Williams both kicked a late goal in the third quarter. That Bailey Williams goal, go check it out. He ran around 8 players. It wasn't actually 8 players, but 4 players for Brisbane, and kicked a goal. Was incredible performance. And at 3/4 time, with those couple goals, I was like, okay, maybe it's still game on. It's still 13 points, the margin, but maybe it's game on. And then Timmy English went forward, kicked a goal straight from the start, like from the opening bounce, basically 54 seconds in. And the Bulldogs got a couple goals in a row through the mid part of the quarter to take the lead. Brisbane got that lead back through Rayner, which was a great goal. He had little impact throughout the game, but he did make an impact there. Then Norton tied it up, and then Tim English got forward again for his second goal of the last quarter to win the game for the Doggies. Huge performance. A lot to talk about from this game. 3 people from Brisbane have been cited and offered weeks. So that's going to be interesting. There's plenty of injuries. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. So the 3 match review players, Harris Andrews is the big one, 3 weeks for a back elbow to Arthur Jones, which knocked him out like cold before he even went close to the ground. Clumsy, silly, yes. I don't think it was deliberate, but at the same time, he knew he was there somewhere, put his arm out to shepherd, really, but it's, yeah, you knock someone out, you're going to be in trouble, just for carelessness, I guess. So we'll see how that plays out. Zach Bailey, he's been offered a week for an elbow. That was much sillier, in my opinion, just because it was unnecessary after the play stopped. So definitely deserves a week, I think, there. And Darcy Gardner, in many respects, cost his team dearly, because he gave a 50 to Norton, who went back and kicked the goal to tie the game up. But it was just an unnecessary thing. He tried to make an impact, but he was late. I don't think it deserved a week personally, but I think the impact was pretty low. It was definitely a 50, and cost his team that way, but I personally don't think that one should be a week, but we'll see how that plays out. Injury-wise, Hugh McCluggage was off in the first quarter with a calf injury. I think he's missing at least a week, so he won't be going to Sydney. So he's a bad one there. Jordan Croft also did his calf later in the game, so he'll probably be missing a little bit. And Arthur Jones went off with concussion, so he will be missing this week as well. Worth noting, the 3 players that have red boxes next to their names, that means they played less than 50% game time, so their ratings don't actually officially count towards their season rating, as we've done always with our rating system. If you play less than 50% game time, your rating does not count for that match. So yeah, lot of action, fast flowing game, one where I don't know, both teams probably feel like they had their chances and maybe wasted a few here and there. Entertaining. Brisbane had a lot more of the football. They had 13 extra inside 50s, 63 to 50. But they couldn't put the score on the board. They were good out of clearance, 45 to 39. Contested footy, uncontested footy, all went the way of the Lions. Turnover numbers, 63 apiece. Very different than the Gold Coast game, for example. Scoring, score sources. Bulldogs kicked 5 goals from kick-ins. That's close to an all-time record, I would say. I don't have the numbers on it. I haven't looked into the numbers of it. But that's an incredible amount of scoring from kick-ins. 5 goals won. Granted, they get 16 opportunities because Brisbane kicked 16 behinds. But 5 goals won. That's a really good return. Brisbane managed 1 goal straight. Stoppage was pretty level, 42 to 39. Turnover scoring was where Brisbane did their damage, 61 to 38. No surprise here. Bulldogs scored really well from defensive half. They had 5 goals from kick-in. They ended up with 63 to 22 from the defensive half. Forward half was dominated by Brisbane, 69 to 32. That was that pressure game that they certainly brought. Players like Charlie Cameron were outstanding and had that pressure up. And then centre bounce scoring was 2 goals apiece. In terms of players, highest rated players, Ed Richards, number 1 rated player on the ground in this one. He was absolutely outstanding. 30 touches throughout this one and kicked a couple goals as well. As always, they get goals from their midfielders. 2 goals from Ed Richards, 3 from Marcus Bontempelli. So just those 2 alone just do a lot of damage. Chuck in 2 from Tim English, which was really huge. I think, off the top of my head, highest rated ruckman game of the weekend was sensational. Who else was really good for them? Kennedy had plenty of it, maybe wasted the ball certainly early. Sam Darcy kicked a couple goals, wasn't outstanding. Riley West was solid. Butterick was good in his first game there. Norton kicked a couple goals, including that important late one. Bailey Williams was really good as an outside runner in this game. Probably the best outside runner in the game, in this match at least. Which is pretty good effort because Brisbane are well known for their outside run game. Obviously, they've got some absolute stars in that position. On the other side of the fence, Brisbane, they were hurt, obviously, by the fact that Hugh McCluggage barely played in this game, was out from quarter time onwards. Fletcher was solid. Lohman was really good in the forward role. Berry, okay. Will Ashcroft, that is, solid without being outstanding. Lockie Neal shows some really good signs. Had plenty of the football. His numbers will suggest he was huge. I think he had 39 disposals, but as we'll get to in a minute with the Collingwood game, disposals don't always mean that you're highly rated, but he was solid. There's no doubt about it. Like, 39 touches is a really good game. Sorko, huge, really, really good performance from him. Charlie Cameron, probably the best small forward game of the weekend. Maybe him and Bailey Humphrey. Really good performance there. Darcy Gardner, okay. Harris Andrews was outstanding as a key defender. And Ryan Lester, really good as well. So, yeah, that's the Brisbane Lions. What do we make? It was an important win for Bulldogs. There's no doubt about it. They're a team that only beat one team that played finals last year. That was GWS twice. Every other team that played finals last year, they couldn't beat. So this is a really good step in the right direction. They were challenged by the reigning premiers, and they just kept coming back. So really, really good performance from them. They needed that. They needed to show themselves that they can compete with the best teams, and people are going to start to think that this is a team that probably can be the best Victorian-based team this year. Obviously, the 2 Queensland teams are really highly rated. Sydney are highly rated. Fremantle, Adelaide, these sort of teams from outside of Victoria. But I think right now, if I was to pick one team from Victoria, I'd be saying Bulldogs are the most likely team to go all the way. They needed that. Brisbane probably didn't need the win as much. They've won the last 2 premierships, and they've done certainly 2024 by being really slow early season. They lost like 3 games to start the year. They came good eventually, but it's just yeah, they know what they're doing. They'll be trying to get form into players, try and get fitness into players, and we know they're good enough to win 10, 15 games in a row if they need to. So you can't write them off at any point in the next couple months. So they'll put this one down as a learning. They'll move on from it. They'll study the game, I'm sure, but I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a Brisbane fan right now or anyone in that organisation. I'm sure they're fine with where they're at. One final game to look at was Sunday night football. Collingwood v St Kilda. The MCG in front of like 80-odd thousand people, and Collingwood get the win in the end by 12 points. St Kilda kicked the first couple and looked pretty solid through most of that first quarter. Scott Pendlebury came on and really changed the game late in that first quarter. Collingwood managed 4 goals to round out that first quarter to lead by 11. St Kilda then had a really good second quarter, kicked 3 in a row before Collingwood got the last 2-point margin at halftime. Compared to the other games, this was a lot lower scoring. Very, very different game than we had throughout the rest of the weekend. Collingwood then managed 2 quick ones in the first 2 minutes of the third quarter to take the lead, and they led the rest of the way in. They did get it out to 18 points at 3-quarter time. St Kilda kicked 2 quick ones at the start of the final quarter, and you felt like maybe they were a chance. Collingwood got a goal midway through that final quarter, and then it just kind of turned into a weird sort of game where Collingwood had a lot of the football, kicked it around a lot, but St Kilda just allowed them to do it and didn't put the pressure on them. And yeah, it was a weird sort of lull into the finish. Usually a team that's trailing would have that full pressure on, but St Kilda didn't seem to do that. When we look at the team stats of this game, it's a weird sort of game in a lot of numbers. But in the end, Collingwood get the 12-point win. They'll be pretty happy that they walk away with this win. 2 teams that have had entirely different pre-seasons. Obviously, Collingwood missing some key defenders in this game. Probably one of the better teams to go against when you're missing key defenders, just because St Kilda probably right now don't have the 4 key forwards, tall forwards that most other teams do. Like next week, Collingwood are going against Adelaide. I reckon this defence would really struggle against Adelaide personally. Having Quainer and Maynard both play key position backs against Adelaide, that means that they'd be against like Fogarty and Walker. So I think they definitely need a key defender to come in this week. If Darcy Moore's not right, they're probably going to have to play Joel Cochran, I would say. But that's a story for another day. Team stats here. Collingwood had an extra 60-odd touches. They just had so much of that loose ball in the back line. It was all uncontested football. It was all marks. Contested football was actually won by St Kilda, but uncontested was plus 54 for Collingwood. Turnover numbers were quite high, 71-74. Overall marks, 147 to 92. So Collingwood had 140 uncontested marks in this game, which just tells you that St Kilda just allowed them to do it too much. They just played that chip game around the sides, back and across, and there wasn't that much pressure from St Kilda in most of those situations. So they did it for a while, and then they'd move the ball forward slowly, and it didn't always work out, but yeah, St Kilda just allowed them to do it for too much of this game, I think, and Collingwood took too much time off the clock doing that it just allowed St Kilda to fall behind. Inside 50 count was 63 to 40, which suggests that St Kilda had plenty of opportunities, but something to take into note with inside 50s, certainly in this respect. St Kilda went a lot faster with their ball movement, there's no doubt about it. But their inside 50s were not great. Like, they were moving the ball fast, but they were still kicking it to disadvantage. Yeah, they did drop some uncontested marks. Yeah, they did miss some set shots from 25 metres out directly in front. So they probably should have kicked more goals than they did. But they also wasted a lot of those inside 50s just with bad options, bad execution. And Collingwood defended it pretty well. On the other side of the fence, only 40 inside 50s for Collingwood. They managed 11 goals. Pretty good return from that. Chuck in the fact that they moved the ball a lot slower, and which means St Kilda were getting all their numbers back, which that was the case for pretty much the whole game. St Kilda's whole team just went back, and just covered a lot of things, but it meant that a lot of Collingwood's goals came from like snaps around the corner or like crumbing sort of goals because there were so many numbers back, but the Collingwood mids, forwards, all kind of knew what they were doing and skilled enough to finish them off. Jordan De Goey kicked 3 goals, all 3 of them from snaps from about 35 metres out. So Schultz kicked a couple important goals. Beau McCreagh kicked 2 at the start of the third quarter. And yeah, that's basically the long and the short of this game. Scoring wise, where did it come from? Stoppage, not much. 23-15 in favour of St Kilda. Turnover game though, Collingwood dominated it in terms of scoring, 62-37. Really good numbers there. Defensive half was 30-21. Forward half was 35-31, and centre bounce was 13-14 in favour of St Kilda. So it was a low-scoring game, certainly compared to the rest of the games this weekend. Not that surprising when you consider it's Collingwood and St Kilda. Collingwood were the stingiest defence in the competition last year. St Kilda, well known over the last couple of years to not be a massively high-scoring game style. And I think the way that these two teams matched up just kind of enforced that even more. St Kilda went full numbers back. Collingwood were like, okay, if you're going to do that, we'll take the time off the clock. We'll chip it around and wait for our opportunity with the right ball users. So in the end, Collingwood get the win, and they'll be stoked with that. In terms of best players, Scott Pendlebury only played 55% game time, but ends up the highest rated player. He had 5 goal assists in the first half, I think. Maybe early in the second half. I can't remember exactly when it was. But it must have been early in the second half. He had 5 of their first 7 goals were goal assisted by Scott Pendlebury. He was huge. He was important. And then in the last quarter, he went back and kind of just marshalled the troops really well from that half-back flank sort of position. Maynard played key defence, was huge. Really good performance from him. Quainer was also very similar. Very, very good. They got the jobs done most of the time. Darcy Cameron was the best ruckman on the ground, obviously going up against Tom De Koning and Rowan Marshall in this one. Rowan Marshall did end up getting concussed and not playing in the last quarter, but Darcy Cameron was clearly the best ruckman, in my opinion, on the ground. Did what he does best. That's intercept marking, but also putting pressure up the ground. He kicked a goal. He was really, really good. Jack Crisp, he was good. Really came into the game in the second half. We said Quainer was good. Elliott was quiet. Josh Dacos had plenty of it. Had 36 touches. Was great. Dan Houston, probably his second or third best game with Collingwood. He was really good. The Collingwood tall forwards really struggled. Their backline was good though. And then Nick Dacos, obviously the one we haven't mentioned yet, he had 41 disposals. Absolute huge performance from him. He just does what not many other players can. Go check out his kick. I mean, the media have probably showed it a billion times already, but early in that third quarter, was it third? Might have been second quarter. Just weaves in and out and then does the most outrageous kick that if anyone else did it, you'd be like, what are they doing? But he takes it 50-metre kick that hits Lockie Schultz without breaking stride and when he had no option. So unreal performance. St Kilda side of things, Higgins had no impact until late. Did kick 1 goal in that last quarter. Silvani was good in his St Kilda debut. Wanganeen Malira was really good in the first half, had little impact in the second half. Well held by Harry Perryman. Sorry. Flanders, okay in his debut for St Kilda. Ron Marshall got concussion, as we said. Tom De Koning was good, but I think beaten by Darcy Cameron. Wilson had plenty of opportunities, wasted a couple of them. Liam Ryan kicked an absolute fantastic goal, but also missed a sitter. Garcia was good. He played on Dacos at times. Cooper Sharman had plenty of opportunities, could have had a great game. Cal Wilkie was their best outside of Jack Sinclair, who had 35 disposals. Collingwood go up against Adelaide this week on Saturday night. That'll be a huge game for them. Getting this win does probably take the stress out of that game a little bit more. They wouldn't have wanted to start 0-2. But they have a pretty good record against Adelaide, but they're typically very close games. So we'll see how that plays out this weekend. St Kilda, they have Melbourne on Sunday. So that will be an important game for St Kilda to bounce back and show maybe, hopefully, some more attacking than what we saw from them this weekend. Next up, and the only thing we got left to look at, is the tips for the weekend, and we had a stinker. We got the first two. Hawthorn, we got wrong. We'll just put our hands up and say we got that one wrong. It's just flat out. The Brisbane one, I did say was the one that I was most toing and froing on. In the end, I went with Brisbane. I should have gone with the Bulldogs. Should have been smarter, but we trusted the Lions, and I think that's fair enough. And then I just thought Collingwood might be a little underdone, and certainly in that back line, the St Kilda forwards might be able to take advantage of the lack of experience, well, not experience, but tools back there, but they just couldn't. They really couldn't, and end up losing that one. So I went 2 of 5, which is a stinking start to the year. Hopefully we do better next week. First couple of weeks are always tough, but that's a really, really tough start for us. But that's footy tipping sometimes. Yeah. That's pretty much a wrap on this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you jump in the comments. Let me know how your team went on the weekend. We'll be back on Thursday with another episode, previewing all 9 matches coming up this weekend. Every team is back on the park this weekend. We're excited. I'll be going to 4 or 5 of the games this weekend, so looking forward to that. So yeah, come back Thursday for that one. Make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button. Make sure you also go check out all the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, no, don't go to Facebook. Don't worry about that one. But those 3 for sure, and Blue Sky as well. We have content every single day going up on most of those, so go check it out. All Aussie Rules everywhere. I'm John. This has been another episode of the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you let me know all your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one.